have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And this is the show where we have deep-seated homosexual tendencies. More on that later.
Yeah?
Yes.
All right. Well, per usual in this season that's been going on for far too long, we continue with the analysis of the new Trump administration and more evidence that the anti-LGBT Putin regime hacked U.S. elections to install Trump and a Republican Congress, and that cabinet.
Why aren't we out rioting? Anyway, Trump has picked ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson for Secretary of State. Tillerson resisted LGBT rights for his employees, but Ann tells me that he helped the Boy Scouts eventually accept gay scouts and scoutmasters. Isn't that nice?
Sure, you remember that.
Isn't that nice?
But Trump, of course, has picked anti-LGBT and moron, former Texas Governor Rick Perry, to run the energy department that Perry wanted to shut down.
And Trump's pick for labor secretary is a sworn enemy of labor, but a big supporter of sexist advertising.
Unbelievable.
For Hardee's.
We've had a little setback in Arkansas for the parental rights of same-sex couples.
But wonder of wonders in this blessed season, the Republican governor of Kentucky has rejected a push for anti-transgender legislation. That might not stop it, but he doesn't think it's a good idea.
But the Cherokee Nation becomes the latest Native American tribe to recognize same-sex marriages.
The Pope this week reaffirmed his contempt for gay priests. I don't know who's going to get to serve there, but there you go.
There are a number of LGBT nominees for the Golden Globes.
And
we'll go through that.
I'm going to review a bunch of shows: A Bronx Tale, Dear Evan Hansen, In Transit, and The Babylon Line, which was my line.
And whether you like them or not, they're probably better than the Trump administration. Well,
yes.
We go through all these nominees. We day by day, worse than the last one. We get the rundown. We rarely get the analysis from the LGBT point of view, which is what we're here to provide.
Here's what I'm seeing. We talk about how far we've come. If you watch the show, you've learned that we've made a lot of progress on a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. But we are far from having elevated LGBT rights to the point where opposition to our rights is a deal breaker. Far from it. I mean, because virtually all of these appointees have anti-LGBT records, and it is not going to stop. But that's not what's going to stop most of them.
No, absolutely. And in fact, one of the objections from the right wing to Tillerson is that he's too pro-LGBT in his work with the Boy Scouts. We'll get to that. But I the most dangerous, it's hard to rank these, but I am going to keep harping on Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education, because she is so out to destroy public schools and so devoted to a fundamentalist Christian approach to education that is so anti-LGBT. Yes. And there was an excellent op-ed piece in the New York Times this week
by Catherine Stewart, who has been on the show, who documents what goes on with the religious right and the way they have worked on taking over public schools and using public school spaces for worship across the country.
And there's a debate about charter schools or vouchers or whatever.
And the ones that she sponsored in Michigan were in the
disaster,
toilet.
Disaster. But one of the reasons they're a disaster, and some of these are, because some charter schools are successful and do good work, but the ones she's interested in, and that so many of these right-wingers are interested in, are for-profit schools, charter schools.
Some of these CEOs of these charter school organizations make $400,000 and $500,000 a year.
And this is not our idea of public education.
No.
And it is raping the school system, and this is what she's going to be about as Secretary of Education.
Terrible.
So it's going to be completely anti-trans attitudes and anti-LGBT. It's going to get rid immediately of the Obama guidelines about treating trans kids with respect. It's going to get rid of any non-discrimination rules in schools, and it's going to foster a curriculum that is religious, Christian religious, and anti-LGBT.
Well, lest we forget, the religious right really started to get into gear, certainly over civil rights, because then they didn't want to have integrated schools, so they started Christian private schools in the South especially,
Yes.
and elsewhere. But they also really got upset, and they got into a political mode when prayer was banned in the public schools, I believe around 1960, 61.
Somewhere
around
in there,
then.
yeah.
And that just like, well, hey, we've enjoyed this forever, and now you're saying we can't do it, and that you're taking God out of the schools, and they've been upset ever since.
And out to get us.
Yes.
And they have engaged in a long campaign. And I am struck by the fact that every single one of these nominees has been chosen to undermine or destroy the department they've been put in charge of.
It's not the first time that's happened. Ronald Reagan appointed a guy named James Watt to the Department of Interior. He was very much an anti-environmentalist, but there were a couple of appointments like that in the Reagan administration.
Yeah,
not every single one.
And not leaving, I have no patience for some of these so-called moderates that the Bushes have appointed or whatever,
Yes.
but they are in some kind of mainstream and they have some kind of values about public service. These guys across the board, every last one of them is out to destroy the whole idea of a government.
And the classic, and everybody's heard about it all week, would be Dancing in the Stars star Rick Perry, although he was a loser there. Not only anti-LGBT and maybe G himself.
Relentlessly anti-LGBT.
He famously wanted to get rid of this department that he's going to head that he couldn't remember the name of. It was Energy, Rick, and that is where you will be going if they confirm you. Energy Department.
He was virulently opposed to same-sex marriage as governor of Texas. He tried to stop same-sex couples from receiving any benefits even after marriage was legalized. He has fought against anything good for the LGBT community for decades.
Well, as with the appointment to the Interior Department, to bring that up again, it's Montana GOP Congressman Ryan Zinke, Z-I-N-K-E, who has a 0 on the HRC, Human Rights Campaign Congressional Scorecard. He made the suggestion in a debate this year that being a lesbian was a choice.
Well, because his opponent for the seat was Denise Juneau, an out lesbian Native American, excellent progressive candidate, but he tried to undermine her in debates by saying, well, if that's your choice.
And then there's the Labor Secretary, Andrew Pudzer, who is a sexist pig, much like the guy who's going to be president of the United States if on Monday the Electoral College goes through with this insanity. But he's very famous for his ads with women in bikinis eating his burgers at Hardee's.
Paris Hilton.
And he said, and what was the quote that he said? Well, he said, people.
He likes women in, blondes and bikinis and burgers, and that's how he runs his business.
It's just awful. He's against the minimum wage, and he's against labor, but he's going to be the head of the Labor Department.
He's also against any non-discrimination rules that include gender identity, and he refused to participate in the HRC Corporate Equality Index. He didn't want his businesses rated on their friendliness to LGBT employees.
But I think we are burying what the country is finally talking about, but too late, is the fact that we're going through a coup by Russia of our own government, and that everybody in the Trump administration has to be sympathetic to Russia, and Trump certainly is, and that they interfered with our elections for sure, and that this is what is going. This is the kind of thing that used to just get people so aroused that they'd be out there with pitchforks saying, no, 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 no. It is
aroused. We couldn't even get the Obama administration to take it seriously when it was happening, or let us know, or handle it appropriately.
I mean, it was alluded to in the debates, and Hillary said to Trump, "You're a puppet of Russia." No, you're a puppet. But he is a puppet of Russia, and that's what's going on. And I'm mourning not just for the loss of all these social issues that we support, but for our country. It's the loss of America.
It's a very, very scary proposition, and I'm sure there are some people who think we're alarmists. And
not in the least. It's over.
Look, I'd love to be an alarmist. I would love to believe that everything will be much more moderate than we fear, but...
You'd love not to be an alarmist.
I'd love to be guilty of being an alarmist.
I see what you're saying.
But I'm scared. Look, the new head of the EPA, Scott Pruitt from Oklahoma, who loves fracking, even though the earthquakes in his state went from like 20 to 900 last year.
Well, as somebody wrote to the Times this week, we can deal with some of these other departments being headed by numbskulls or bad people at some level, but not this area of endeavor of the environment, because if we can lose the whole planet. Well, and again, I'm trying not to be alarmist, but there we are.
And in little things, the Interior Department is the one that has been declaring all the LGBT monuments in this last year that we've been talking about, not only Stonewall, but others. And
the right wing is looking at rescinding these. I don't know. I've never heard of anybody being rescinded before, but I guess it could be
you're
done.
Certainly not going to see new ones under, Ryan Zinke.
I mean, it's somewhat encouraging. I mean, it's too late to see people like John McCain come out and say Putin is a thug, he's an enemy. Corker is saying the same thing. Senator Corker from Tennessee, I believe it is.
Well, I have to agree with Rachel Maddow that they're all going to roll over on these nominees. They might pick one, to focus on to make it look like they're standing up, but they're never going to go after all these people
vote against
the way
all of
they
them.
should. Rand Paul is going to end up being our hero in some of this, too.
And then there's Rex Tillerson.
Yeah.
Now, this is the ExxonMobil executive. He's been there forever. He spent his whole life there. And, of course, he's a close friend of Putin. Where's the commitment on international LGBT rights going to be when you're sympathetic to a regime like Russia? He's a totally compromised business leader, but he's not the first, and he has no diplomatic experience.
Look,
but they do want us to stop ISIS from throwing us off the tops of buildings. That's Trump's only LGBTQ issue.
I don't see him going to bat for us that strongly. So we have an Obama State Department that has declared LGBT rights are human rights, has set up a global equality office, and has labored on our behalf around the world. Is Rex Tillerson going to do that? Rex Tillerson, and again, I will give Rachel Maddow credit for this, because she explained last night what an outlaw he is. Friendship with Putin is the least of his problems. He has systematically, around the globe, made deals with dictatorial regimes in defiance of orders from the State Department. They have asked him again and again and again not to make deals with these countries, and he just ignores them and goes right ahead and does it.
This at least can come out in the Senate hearings on their nominations, and the Democrats can raise hell about it if they're going to be the least bit effective. It's not going to be raised about President-elect Trump. So Brad Hoylman, our state senator, has
I'm not finished with Tillerson.
Well, we'll get back to him, but Brad, I'll just interject this.
Yeah.
Brad Hoylman, our state senator, is introducing a bill that if you want to be elected president from our state, and he hopes other states will do this, you have to release your tax returns, or you are not eligible for the November ballot. It is something that we needed to know about Trump, and I think could have helped stop him if all that had come out.
And we could take bets on whether he's actually ever going to have a public discussion of his business interests and
Well,
and whether the Republican Congress will go after him for violating the emoluments clause the minute he takes office, which is he will be violating.
Well, it looks like the CIA may take him out on a couple of things because he's
back
not,
to
he's
Tillerson.
Not being nice to them. Back to Rex Tillerson's ExxonMobil CEO, and perhaps
because at least he's a grown-up as opposed to some of these guys. But Tillerson, a couple things about ExxonMobil. So. Years ago, Mobil Oil was known as a progressive company that gave benefits to gay employees, benefits for health insurance, non-discrimination laws, all of that kind of stuff. Then Exxon bought Mobil. And you know what Exxon did? It canceled all those benefits to LGBT employees. Wiped them out.
The only other one I remember doing that was Ross Perot on his firm. He ended domestic partner benefits.
So for many, many years, the LGBT community and controllers of states around the country who are shareholders of Exxon went after them with shareholder resolutions, demonstrations, everything, saying, you have to institute non-discrimination, at least, even if you don't do benefits, at least have non-discrimination rules that include sexual orientation and gender identity. And they refused
until
under Rex Tillerson.
Until President Obama wrote an executive order that we wait with bated breath to see whether the Trump administration is going to rescind this on January 20th.
I was going to say
likely.
January 20th, 2 p.m. at the latest.
Right.
Gone.
Which says that if you are a federal contractor, which almost everybody is, 25% of the employment in the United States is related to that in some way, but contracting, you may not discriminate on this basis. So then they codified their policy at ExxonMobil.
They did. They had to if they wanted to keep doing business with the federal government. But I agree with you. I think that is gone. That is the first thing that's gone in the Trump administration, or in the top 5. So we'll see whether ExxonMobil does
making a list and checking it twice. Gonna find out who's gay or straight.
So Tillerson stood in the way of non-discrimination for years at ExxonMobil, but had to back down when the executive order happened. On the other hand, Tillerson has been the chair of the Boy Scouts of America for some years, and just the last few years. And when he came into the chairmanship of the Boy Scouts, I vividly remember us talking about this.
Did he succeed Gates?
He succeeded, who was it? At any rate, when he took over, the idea was that he was going to be a little more moderate about LGBT issues with the Boy Scouts. And sure enough, it is under his leadership that the organization gradually changed.
The first thing they did was allow gay scouts, and that was under Gates. And then they decided that...
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Tillerson was pre-Gates. I'll have to look that up.
Well, anyway. Yeah. But then they expanded that to Scout Masters, but only if the local scout troop wants a gay Scout Master.
Yes, local option.
Yeah. So anyway.
So in sum, we're not looking forward to Rex Tillerson as a defender of human rights as Secretary of State, or even, across the board. He has no experience of that. He has, in fact, fought it. And his experience as a businessman is not public service for human rights.
It's not as if America didn't have a lot of sins before this.
Oh my God, yes.
But we have certainly documented them on this show, and all you have to do is read your history. The Vietnam War, the wars in the Middle East, all that other kind of stuff. But we're still semi-regarded as leader of the free world. We're not going to be. I mean, it's basically going to be Germany, which is led by a conservative government, but is still trying to uphold liberal democratic values, which the United States is not. We're losing our country.
And, one of the reasons Tillerson is high on Trump's list is because Trump wants to use him and his experience to fight Iran. And one of the top agenda items for Trump is to redo the Iran nuclear deal, and he's going to do it by making unilateral demands, not talking to the other countries that are partners in this, and imposing unilateral, much worse sanctions if they don't go along with it.
General Mattis, who was supposed to be a Secretary of Defense, if he gets a waiver from Congress because he's been a general within the last 7 years, that he does not favor tearing up the Iran deal. And I watched Benjamin Netanyahu on 60 Minutes this weekend, who wants to get rid of the Iran deal and hated Obama for doing it. But he says, well, you know, my relations with my Arab neighbors are much better now because of that deal.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, thanks very much. Oh.
Well, because the Arabs are split between the Shia
And
Iranians and the Sunni Arabs, so he's in better shape with the Sunnis.
You know, more evidence, if you didn't know it, of Trump's bullying, is including his cyberbullying, which he's using his Twitter account for, going after Chuck Jones, the union leader in Indiana, who criticized him. I mean, this is insane. The president-elect of the United States trying to rain hell down on a local union leader who criticized him for not telling the truth in the carrier deal. It's just insane. And this is what he wants to do to everybody who dissents. And it's becoming a model for average people, the people who voted for him, to take it out on everybody around them that they don't like. And they just do it. Headlines
on Tillerson on the Boy Scouts. You know, Tony Perkins, Tillerson helped make the Boy Scouts gay. Tillerson led the organization through a pivotal decision to open membership to gay youth, lobbied to end the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy.
But if he's going to aid our alliance with Russia, I don't think it's going to upset Trump.
Well, we'll see whether Trump takes a note from Putin to institute no promo homo laws.
Well, you know, thousands of people are out in the streets in Europe protesting Russia over what's going on in Aleppo. I don't see that happening here, by the way.
Heavens no.
All right.
All right. So,
well, let's put up that picture of Mike Hotpence. This is a guy named Glenn Parnell, a gay man who happens to look like Mike Pence. That's not Mike Pence, that's Glenn Parnell. He is collecting money for Planned Parenthood, the Trevor Project, gay causes, etc.
In Times Square.
Because he looks like Mike Pence. I think that's great.
And let's see, in Minnesota and Tennessee, funds have been established to help the LGBT communities there under the Trump administration, because people do see bad things coming down the road.
By the way, we mentioned the anti-abortion bill in Ohio that says it's a 20-week abortion ban. They could now, you know, as early as 6 weeks, they could restrict abortion.
No, they vetoed that.
I had that.
Kasich vetoed the heartbeat bill.
He had a headline the other thing. It's a good thing I watched the show.
He signed the 20-week bill.
I see.
Which is still probably unconstitutional,
We hope so.
At least he had the sense to veto the 6-week bill.
Okay.
And Trump was in Wisconsin this week and getting along famously with Paul Ryan and Scott Walker. At the same time, Wisconsin issued a report on the future of the family, and the report very clearly omitted any mention of LGBT families. That's what
Can we give them some good news?
Please.
Susan Olsen got fired, the former Brady Bunch star. You got
Cindy.
She was Cindy. We got pictures of them side by side from her Brady Bunch days. She went after she's 55 now. Wow.
She does a talk show in L.A. that's sort of a right-left political talk show.
She was debating an openly gay actor named Leon Accord Whiting, and she didn't like what he said, and she didn't like things he posted afterwards, and she wrote on Facebook and everything, "You're the biggest faggot in the world, let me, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Awful. She got fired from her job at LA Talk Radio for this.
Now, do you think she should have been fired?
For that kind of stuff? Yeah. Yes. I mean, if you are abusive and bigoted in that, yes. I mean,
I guess so.
You know, if you try,
I'm a little confused on where to draw the line.
If you try it on this show, don't try it on this show.
I have no desire to speak like that.
Exactly.
Except that I called Rick Perry a moron.
Well, that's not bigoted.
That's journalism.
That's just reporting. All right.
Let's go to Loretta Lynch.
Sure.
A little beacon of light in the fading, in the sunset of the Obama administration.
Why don't you call us, Loretta? She was in town. We got a picture of her. There she is at the National Stonewall Monument. That's right across from the Stonewall Bar.
See, there's an Interior Department Park Service guy to the right of her.
These are parks officials. That's the statue of Gay Liberation by George Siegel, which is installed, has been in the park for more than 20 years. But there she was making that visit. She went inside and into the bar and did an interview with Rachel Maddow. And then we have another picture of her. She spoke at the Harvey Milk School. And she said,
our alma mater.
And she said to the kids, I get my inspiration from all of you. You are the ones who have the courage to walk with us and stand with us as we work to vindicate rights. Man, you ain't going to hear that from Jeff Sessions.
She also explained to them, or claimed to explain, that bias comes from ignorance,
yes,
and that we have to keep working to educate people to diminish bias. And she explained, Rachel asked her about how we should deal with the Trump administration. And she said, we just have to keep fighting back, and we have to keep fighting back as individual people. It's the same message we're getting everywhere. We need grassroots movements to stand up and object to this. Someone said to me, I was at an event earlier this week, and talking about some of the marches coming up the day after the inauguration, and someone who's a prosecutor said to me, oh, what good is that? And I said, it's how we ended the Vietnam War. It's how we got our rights. You have to show up. You have to be visible in the streets. And if we can create a critical mass, then you can gain some leverage against these people.
I think it is going to take a profound disruption of business as usual in this country to the point of a national strike, if we can agree on one and what we should be marching for and striking for. To stop this, we have to disrupt the business of the country to get Trump.
I think Trump is disrupting the business of the country.
Yes, so we need to show him, if he does this, this country will not function.
All right.
One of our viewers, Frank, we asked you to tell us what you think we should be, what you're doing, and that would give us hope. Actually, he said, I've been sending Gay USA to everybody I know, and he says he's participating in to amend the HIV criminalization law, and he sends local LGBT news stories to the channels via on Facebook. So anyway.
And they held a rally against hate in Mississippi.
Yes,
it
they
didn't
did.
Look huge, but
well,
we have a picture
of it.
Yeah, do you have any?
Not huge, but I mean, that's, again, it's an encouraging sign that was done.
Yes, especially in Mississippi, where they're still fighting that big, broad religious freedom bill. They have a lawsuit against it.
Yes. And they've got a whole bunch of new anti-LGBTQ bills that they're going to be introducing there in Mississippi.
Well, on that point, the Human Rights Campaign has put out a new publication called the State Equality Index. It is a excellent roundup, state by state, of the bad laws coming your way. So I highly encourage you to take a look at that. You can go to hrc.org and look for the State Equality Index. It will give you a rundown, and it's a great organizing tool because it lets you know what is actually in the hopper and gives you information about what it is you want to look for and fight against.
We beat most of these bills back, even in places like Oklahoma and Texas last year.
Absolutely.
But I am not so confident this year. I think the right wing is feeling their oats, and they're saying it's their country now, and this is what they're going to try to put through.
A small anecdote, Tempe, Arizona. A guy walks into a church office because he sees the church flying a rainbow flag, and says, you blah, 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 how dare you, and he said...
That's exactly what he said.
Word for word. And he says, if Hillary Clinton had been elected, I would have just passed you by. But since Trump was elected, I feel I have a right and an obligation to come in here and yell at you.
It's insane.
Luckily, all he did was yell, and they stayed calm, and he left. But really,
All right. In Arkansas, our friend Art Leonard, the Legal Eagle from the Gay City News, says that we've suffered a surprising setback. Up until now, in married gay or lesbian couples, when, well, certainly in lesbian couples, when the woman has the child, her spouse is also the mother, is also the parent of the child. But
and they're both listed on the birth certificate.
Yes, but the Arkansas court,
Supreme Court,
said that the certificate is a documentation of who are the biological mother and father of a child.
Wrong.
And must be accurate for purposes of public health research and identification of public health trends, which is wrong. Yes, it's not true. They allow adoptive parents and things like that on the birth certificate, et cetera.
Right.
So,
that used to trip me up. I used to have to think hard about that. But then I realized that with straight couples, if either together they adopt a child or one is given birth and the other is an adoptive parent, they put them both on the birth certificate because it isn't a record of the birth experience. It's a record of who are the parents.
Right.
Who are the parents? And these same-sex couples are the parents and should be on the birth certificate.
there used to be a total assumption when a woman gave birth that whoever she was married to was the father.
Still is.
So
That is still the assumption.
Well, so we got to let.
But that assumption does not apply with married same-sex couples in Arkansas at the moment. I believe this will be overturned. I think this is a temporary setback.
And a Minnesota couple is suing this. This is a non-gay couple suing the state for the right to deny service to LGBT people, despite the fact that they have no gay customers. They intend to do a video service. They're being represented by Alliance Defending Freedom. It's a preemptive war here, folks, and they are trying to. They say for their business, which is called Telescope Media, we want to magnify Christ like a telescope. Well, you're in the public arena. You
Be our guest.
Yes.
Shockingly, the Alliance Defending Freedom dropped a lawsuit in Massachusetts against their gender identity and expression non-discrimination law because Massachusetts clarified the wording of its law to explain that closed houses of worship are not public accommodations.
Right.
Now, as we see in Minnesota, that kind of explanation doesn't always stop the Alliance Defending Freedom, but in this case, they have backed away. But it's still going to be on the ballot.
2018, I think.
Yes.
To repeal the law. There is a referendum effort there. In Pittsburgh, the city council banned so-called conversion therapy for minors.
Yep, that's good news. And
even though it's favored by most of the Trump administration.
Congratulations to Representative David Cicilline
Yeah.
of Rhode Island, Democrat, out gay, first LGBT member of Congress in the House leadership. That would be the minority leadership, of course, because these are the Democrats in the House. In New York State, the state is opening Medicaid to transgender youth who need transition care. Adults, I think, have been eligible, but youth have not because of a sort of stigma that, youth, trans, how can you be sure they're making the right decision, blah, 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 but now they have seen the light.
In Kentucky, Governor Matt Bevin, a right-wing Republican, has slammed the anti-transgender laws and says he doesn't want them in Kentucky. He doesn't think it should be considered, as he doesn't think it's an issue in the state. We'll see how that goes with the legislature.
And the San Francisco Symphony has canceled a couple of concert dates in North Carolina because of their HB2 anti-trans, anti-non-discrimination law. I'm happy to see that even though McCrory has been kicked out, awaiting only a promotion to the Trump administration, that organizations are still aware that the law still exists, and while Roy Cooper, the new Democratic governor, will try to get it overturned, repealed, whatever, and the Justice Department of the United States change its mind about suing the state? Right. But meanwhile, the pressure is still on to boycott the state and act for its repeal.
I want to note that we've just passed the 6th-month anniversary of the Orlando massacre, and Orlando officials there have launched a Safe Places initiative, a voluntary program in which participating businesses and other establishments designate themselves as places that will report anti-LGBTQ incidents and provide safe spaces for victims of harassment or threats.
Indiana is not always such a safe place. The American Family Association, the Indiana Family Institute, and other right-wing organizations are challenging in court the various city non-discrimination laws as too vague and a violation of their freedom of religion. Bloomington, Carmel, Columbus, and Indianapolis, which have such laws, have asked the Court of Appeals there to stop the lawsuit.
Our old friend Fred Karger, a Republican gay activist who ran for president years ago, is trying to take away the tax-exempt status of the Mormon Church. Fred thinks big, but he's interviewing people and the way they're affected by the political activities of the church. I would not give this much hope, but keep trying, Fred.
Victory in Oklahoma, where the Cherokee Nation Attorney General says that same-sex marriage is okay under tribal laws. The Tribal Council still has to discuss this, but it looks good. And in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the council there, by a vote of 5-2, has adopted a human rights ordinance, which includes non-discrimination rules for sexual orientation and gender identity, and they have set up a human rights commission to adjudicate any complaints brought. Okay. And we told you this was coming, the National Center for Trans Equality has released its report, a survey of 28,000 trans people nationwide from all 50 states, the District of Columbia, territories of the United States, and military bases around the world. They found, of course, disproportionate amounts of poverty, unemployment, harassment, violence, psychiatric distress, and discrimination in healthcare, homelessness, and suicide among trans people.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because of the discrimination and stigma.
Sure. You can view it at ustranssurvey.org.
Yeah, it's an amazing comprehensive report with a ton of information. Depressing, but encouraging to have this information.
Do we have time for this nice video?
Sure, go.
This is a gay marriage proposal at a Chicago Bulls game. We'll say that in advance because you're going to hear music if you're listening to the podcast here.
Until the end.
But we think it's very sweet, so take it away from the Chicago Bulls game.
Because I couldn't dance, and now I'm back to let you know I can really shake them down. Do you love me? I can really move. Do you love me? I'm in the groove. Do you love me? Do you love me? Now that I can dance. Watch me now. Hey, watch me now. Watch me now. Watch me now. Watch me now. I can really shake them down. Hey, watch me now. 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 Do you love me? 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 Now that I can dance. Watch me now.
Congratulations, Michael and Jake.
That'll take several years for them to, if they choose to overturn the Obergefell decision.
The proposee is a big Bulls fan. The proposer told the Bulls he wanted to do this and wanted to do something before the game, and they said, "Oh no, we're going to make this a big thing in the game at a timeout."
Well, that's great.
It was great.
Maybe this isn't such a bad country after all.
Well, I don't know. How about Brian Brown, the head of the National Organization for Marriage, still desperate to get in our way? He is now launching the International Organization for the Family. He's got all his usual suspects like Robert George of Princeton and the Heritage Foundation. They held a meeting in Cape Town, South Africa, and they have what is now called the Cape Town, Alliance, Promise, whatever. And they're heading out around the world to stop us.
They're filling their oats.
Whatever.
And the Pope. We're in international news?
One sad story from the Bronx here. A 68-year-old gay man was murdered viciously by a younger guy he met in a hookup. The guy hit him over the head with a hammer.
Who sounded quite mad, by the way.
Well, it says they argued over payment for the encounter, but it was a very vicious, awful murder.
And then there's the vicious Pope.
Yeah.
I know you think he's Santa Claus, but he's not. He reiterated this week that people who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies, who practice homosexuality, or who support the so-called gay culture cannot be Catholic priests. Well, that doesn't leave you very many, Francis.
He says they are in a situation that gravely hinders them from relating correctly to men and women.
My friend Bernard Lynch, who is a Catholic priest, who was gay and married, says nothing has changed. The sole murder of LGBT people continues in the church. And this was supposed to be the year of mercy, he said.
Well, we hear occasionally, and I heard recently from a viewer people who say, look, the Pope is a nice guy and he likes us and it's been a big step forward and really, he has gay friends and I'm sure his private opinions are that gay people are fine. Well,
who cares?
What does that have to do with the hiring of gay priests?
I'm sure I'm represented by some people in public life who don't like us very much but vote for us all the time because they're afraid of us. That's the way I'd like to keep it.
Well, the Pope... this is a step backward. A previous, even more conservative regime said you can be gay as long as you don't act on it and be a priest. He's now saying you cannot even be a priest if you are gay.
Well, that's crazy.
No matter what you don't do.
Well, fine. Join an organization that doesn't worship a false god.
On the other hand, in Taiwan, the pressure for same-sex marriage continues to grow. In reaction to the 50,000 Christians who marched against same-sex marriage about 10 days ago.
250,000 crowded into the square there. Look at that. That's quite a
For
march.
Same-sex marriage.
There's a big march.
Huge.
So it looks like it's going to happen there if,
if China doesn't crush Taiwan at the behest of the Trump administration.
And what's going on in Hong Kong?
Well, then he wouldn't be able to build his hotel. I guess he's not
What's
out to
going on
crush
in
them.
Hong Kong with the lion?
Oh, the HSBC
Bank
Bank in Hong Kong painted its lion sort of rainbow for gay pride there. And there were some people, I think not her, but there were others who didn't like the colorful lions. I think the lions are very cute.
The new Conservative Prime Minister in New Zealand, Bill English, who voted against marriage equality twice, it is the law, says he now supports it. So
because he figured out that same-sex married couples were not a danger to the country.
Well, Trump says he supports it too, says he's fine with it now, but of course he's appointing Supreme Court justices who will overturn it. So
I
don't
trust
be
the
fooled.
new Prime Minister of New Zealand far more than Donald Trump, although maybe it's because he's farther away. Footnote, we told you we celebrated last week the election of the new president of the Gambia,
yes.
and congratulated the outgoing homophobic, violent, corrupt president for stepping aside.
Jama.
Yeah, well, he's changed his mind. He's not so sure that he wants to step aside voluntarily.
Well, in Israel, they changed their mind about the naturalization process for foreign same-sex partners. Now they're going to be the same as for heterosexuals. Same-sex couples had to wait through a 7-year waiting period, and heterosexuals only had to wait 4 years. Now it's going to be the same 4 years for both.
Yeah, but this is just for citizenship and recognition of marriages performed elsewhere.
Yes.
Same-sex marriage
Ain't
is
doing
still
marriage.
not legally
Correct.
performed in Israel. Another thing they did in Israel was that they changed their rules. People who die of HIV and AIDS no longer need to be tagged, separated, and covered in concrete.
Oh my God.
Thanks. Very progressive.
All right.
In Russia, a committee of the Duma, which is their parliament, has rejected a ban on transgender people marrying. You might think this is, wow, very progressive in Russia, but the reason they did that was because marriage is already limited to a man and a woman. I suspect they do not recognize transgender people in that definition of man and woman. Not good. And in South Australia, territory of Australia, they will recognize foreign marriages, as they are doing now in Israel. This was the location where they had that horrible incident of the British couple that was honeymooning there, and one of them died, and they wouldn't give any recognition to the husband, and it was a mess, and it was awful. And as a result of that case, they are now going to recognize same-sex married couples who were married elsewhere.
Well, in AIDS news, we start off with some very sad news. Our old friend and comrade, Gina Quattrocchi, who was the CEO of Bailey House, a residence for people with AIDS in Greenwich Village for over 25 years now, has died of cancer. She was a frontline activist. She was a founding member of the Ford Foundation funded 30 for 30 campaign that advocates to ensure the needs of women, including transgender women, are
there she
included
is
in
with
the
Larry
HIV response.
Kramer,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was there with Larry Kramer. She served on every committee, every demonstration.
Terrific person, dedicated, longtime fighter for people with HIV and AIDS. Bailey House is a residence, and been there many times, been in many venues with Gina. She was a wonderful human being, and this is a tragic loss.
And a black belt in karate, I read. And she was tough. She would go to these Mike Bloomberg AIDS things where everybody was supposed to celebrate or mark World AIDS Day, and she would be the one who took them on and said, you're not doing this, and you need to do this. And she was that kind of person, which was great. And people in social services who are getting their money from the city don't often like to do that.
You have anything else
Nope.
Okay. Are you excited by La La Land?
I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I want to.
I'm not sure I do, but I suppose I'll see it eventually. It is now considered the front runner, and it won the LA Film Critics Award for Best Film.
Moonlight is right behind it now.
It is, but we'll see whether the Oscar voters have the guts to do Moonlight rather than La La Land. I suspect not. But at the LA Film Critics Awards, Moonlight won Best Ensemble Acting Award, and Mahershala Ali won Best Supporting Actor. There he is.
That's a picture of him. He's also nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor in a film.
He seems to be the front runner for Best Supporting.
He plays the drug dealer who mentors the young gay boy.
Yeah.
who's
And
holding
he's
there.
terrific. He is
Oh, yes.
absolutely terrific. Totally lovable and wonderful.
As is everybody in the cast. I mean,
Yeah.
Naomi Harris is also nominated for a Golden Globe in that movie for supporting actress. It's nominated for Best Screenplay, and it's nominated for Best Film.
Yep.
Other Golden Globe nominations of note: Ruth Negga for Loving has been nominated for Best Film Drama Actress. Florence Foster Jenkins got 4 nominations, including for supporting actor for Simon Helberg.
On the left there.
And they were all nominated. All of the entire cast was nominated.
But he's the gay character.
He's the gay guy.
Yeah.
Nocturnal Animals, which has got a nod for Best Director, Tom Ford, and Best Supporting Actor for Aaron Taylor Johnson. In the TV category, Jeffrey Tambor is once again nominated for Transparent, and
Sarah Paulson for the OJ series.
and American Crime Story. She's nominated also. So I think she may be competing.
Or American Horror Story, I think she was in. Not American.
Okay.
American Crime Story is the
I
OJ series.
Oh, okay. Apologize
but she's
for that.
also an American Horror Story. All right. Do you want to talk about the plays you have seen?
Well, sure. Well, it was a busy week, and it is very hard to, I have to say, to appreciate theater when things are so much more dramatic in the streets these days.
It is.
It is. To sit through these things. I mean, A Bronx Tale, Chess Palminteri. It was a great movie, I thought. Really, I thought it was a really good movie about growing up in the Bronx and being mentored by a gangster. It's a little bit like Moonlight in that respect. And then he made it into a play, and now it's a musical. And although these two, Nick Cordero as the local gangster Sonny and Hudson Lovero as the protagonist, as a precocious kid, they're good. But to me, it just doesn't add a lot to the story. Then there's Dear Evan Hansen, which is getting great reviews. It's a transfer from off-Broadway.
Fantastic
Yep.
reviews.
It's a musical about how a bullied nerd, played by Ben Platt in a breakout performance, has become a hero in cyberspace and then crashes to Earth. I would say it's a small story that could be told a little quicker, with a little less embellishment, but people seem to enjoy it.
Are we impressed that they would do a bullying story?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's well received and it's well staged. Then there's The Babylon Line at Lincoln Center by the out-gay playwright Richard Greenberg, who's still writing plays, where he tells more to the audience than he shows, unfortunately. But this one about a writing teacher from the city who reverse commutes to Levittown High School on Long Island to do adult ed it is, I would say, enlivened by Julie Halston, who's sitting there,
We love
our
Julie.
friend, and Randy Graff as housewives who are trying to better themselves. And then I saw In Transit, saw it with our associate producer, Bill Ballman. Lots of talented people singing on the subways, a cappella. But it's cliched. And the lyrics aren't, but it has one good song that I think we all need to take to heart. That's a gay couple. There's a gay couple in it, including Telly Leung there, who you see on the right. But even that is a cliche. And
a negative cliche.
yes, there's a very good song in the play towards the end. It's time to give up on your dreams. Is
that the theme for this show tonight?
It's about a woman. It's about a woman who has been trying to make it as an actress, and finally, her boss in the firm where she works during the day says, "It's time to give up on your dreams," and it's sung.
Surely that is not the last message of the play.
Almost.
I saw a couple of things. First of all, there's I keep being alerted to movies that are being released on video on demand and DVD, and I never know whether people are actually taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
But there's a new one called Girls Lost. It's a Swedish movie about teens, trans teens, and it's sort of a fantasy thing. Not so much my style, but if you're into that, that's coming along. Girls Lost, available this week from Wolf Video.
And if you're in New York, there's a free exhibit at 231 10th Avenue, just south of 23rd Street there. It's called On Christopher Street, Transgender Portraits. These are photographs by Mark Seliger, Seliger, and that's one of them. He went to Christopher Street to just start taking pictures, and he kind of noticed there's an awful lot of trans people down here, and he kind of made that. He's a very famous photographer. He's done a lot of great work, and he does great work here, and you can just go in and see it for free.
And I saw the movie Jackie.
Oh,
Well,
Jackie Kennedy.
Yes, I really didn't think I wanted to see it. I just thought,
I wanna see it.
really? Do I want to see it?
I hope it's on the plane. I'm leaving. And Gabe Gonzalez is going to be here next week.
Yes, you may
And
remember.
Chris Cooper is going to be here the week after.
Yeah.
So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody. And happy
and then you'll be
Hanukkah
back after
and,
the first of
happy
the year.
holidays. Yes, I will be back.
So a couple of friends were going to see Jackie, and they said, "Oh, come along." And I thought, okay, we'll go to the cheap early morning show, $8 if you go before noon. It was a much better movie than I expected it to be. More quirky and interesting, less predictable. But on the other hand, it was really mean, I thought, to Jackie Kennedy. It was a really negative portrayal of her in many ways.
In what way?
Well, it portrayed her as kind of hysterical and drinking a lot. And
She's sitting next to her husband when his head is blown off.
I know, but...
Not to mention what he did in life, you know, screwing around all the time.
Yeah, but
Has that gone into?
Not much, no, because it's really all about the assassination and the funeral and a little, and they recreate the White House tour, so. But even in that, she's a pale version of what Jackie really was. She tries to capture the sort of breathy voice, but
Did they show her saving Grand Central Terminal?
No.
Which is one of her greatest achievements, by the way. The whole landmarks law was upheld by the Supreme Court because Jackie Kennedy was behind this effort. She didn't get involved in very many public causes, and she did in that one.
I thought, in the end, I have to say the movie was more interesting than I expected it to be, but I came out of it really resenting the fact that all these men made a movie about Jackie Kennedy that was really nasty. That was my reaction to it.
It's too bad. How about Ari? How is he portrayed?
He's not in it.
Oh, it's not about that.
I'm telling you, it's a very limited period of time.
Okay.
On the other hand, on the Bravo show Married to Medicine, Atlanta, they're doing a trans storyline of a trans man going through a transition who goes to see one of the doctors.
Is that going to still be allowed under the Trump administration?
I think the entire Bravo network will disappear or will be the locus of the revolution in the Trump administration.
I am looking to everybody out there who runs an organization or who does a show to be making big statements about this all the time now. I don't want to just hear from you that you want money, so that, we can continue to support your group and you're going to continue to fight. I want to hear what you're going to do. I want to hear you we want Democrats to take on the administration more than they are.
In detail.
Yes.
These vague complaints are not going to be useful. It's going to have to be very concrete, and it's what was missing from the Democrats in the election, too. We need concrete details of where things are going wrong and strategies to fight back.
Yes.
And it really is important that people show up in the streets to voice their resistance.
People are going to be demonstrating on Monday in state capitals when the Electoral College is voting.
And the day after the inauguration in Washington and New York, and I assume all over the country. All right, we've run out of time for our ranting.
I hope we still have a country when I come back, but I'm leaving.
Andy, have a good time
Thank you
on
very
your
much.
little
I'll miss you.
vacation. I'll be here with Gabe Gonzalez and Chris Cooper, and I hope you will be too. I will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.